Thank you so much. Mr. Toastmaster, fellow Toastmasters, and welcome guest Parvin. I am going to do an icebreaker. It has been 15 years since I did one of these speeches, so I thought I should start back at the very beginning. Since I'm very new to the club, then I thought this would be a good one to start with. So I do have a Toastmasters little pin from years ago, but I'm starting again. If music be food for the soul, then I feel that I've been well nourished over my last many decades. I don't remember my mother singing lullabies to me. I don't remember her soprano solos for 2 years while we lived in Sherbrooke, Quebec. But I do remember when I was 5 years old, sitting at an old upright piano with my dad, and he would be pounding out Chattanooga Shoeshine Boy and Cruising Down the River and all those old things that you young people wouldn't know what they were. But it was fun. And it seems that the memories of my childhood actually are bound up in music an awful lot. So I thought I'd just use music as a structure for giving you a little bit of information. The school days that I remember the best were when we had Friday assembly and we used to be able to sing. But we sang songs like Rural Britannia and The Maple Leaf Forever, and then we'd get to the Squidgigan Ground, and I knew you'd know that, and and things like Row, Row, Row Your Boat, and we'd do lots of rounds and stuff. So that was the fun part of school. But when I was 7, I was in the TB hospital for 9 months, and I was on bed rest. But even there, I got involved in music because I was with brownies. So we'd sit in our beds with our colorful little scarves and our little brown tams, and we joined a music festival. And you might say, well, how could you be in a festival? You're in bed in TB hospital. Well, it was through that magical modern medium of magnetic tape. In later years, my best friend, Doris, and I learned to jive to Diana by Paul Anka, or we'd really hop it up to Way Down Yonder, New Orleans, or we'd kind of sigh with Pat Boone's Love Letters in the Sand. My mother wasn't very appreciative of my modern music. She loved classical music. And every Saturday, the Metropolitan Opera broadcast would boom from the living room with lots of volume and completely drowned out my little transistor radio and me trying to listen to the hit parade one room away. In my early teens, I resisted her efforts to make me sit down and listen to this. Oh, you have to hear Caruso. Oh, listen to this one. This is the sextet. You'll love this one. It's like, Mom. When I was 14, I went to visit my aunt and uncle in Ottawa, and he was a physicist. They had a beautiful classical collection of music, and my mom didn't want them to think that she was negligent in my musical upbringing, so she made me sit down and think, now, okay, what did Rossini write? And Verdi was written by, and did. So in case Uncle Brownie asks you these things, you know, you'll know. Well, it just so happened that that summer was when South Pacific came out, the musical. And we listened to that all summer long. I didn't hear any classical music there. And when we were driving in his car, and we'd drive up to White Lake to their cottage, he would teach us all the old Army songs, like there were Beans, Biggest Submarines in the quartermaster store. So that was kind of fun. I had no apartment in my no piano in my apartment, the little apartment that Mom and I shared. So I used to have to go down after school. After high school, I'd go down the road to the Collège Notre Dame d'Acadie, and I would go into one of these long corridors of music rooms. And you'd closet yourself in this little room, just you and your piano, and you'd play your scales and your arpeggios and your pieces, because you only had an hour. And it was really hard every now and again not to kind of break into trying to pick out one of the hit tunes, right? And one day I was right in the middle of Since My Baby Left Me, and all of a sudden I heard, and I looked over, and here was Sister Mary Music with her little wimple face in the door going, you know, you're not supposed to be doing that because you only have a certain amount of time. I still blame that little Sister Mary Music for making me an I can only play with music kind of musician. Until my college years, that was, until I met Steve. At the University of New Brunswick, I had a great time. I used to play for different groups. I would sing with a glee club. And then in the lounge, in the women's residence, after dinner, there'd be Gail and Jen and Ann and I, and we'd play guitar and piano, and we'd just jam, and we'd bring up all kinds of harmonies and just have a really great time. Ann had a really good voice, and I said to her, you know, Mer, one day when you become a very famous singer, I'm going to be able to say, I knew you when. And I did just that when I bought her first hit record, Snowbird. I wasn't very appreciative over the years of my mother's attempts to make me sit down and really listen to classical music. But in my late teens and 20s, all of a sudden one day I'd be humming or, singing this little song like Toreadora brim badum da-dum, and I'd think, oh my gosh, that's from Carmen. I know that. And all of these things would have stuck in my mind that my mom had played for me. Gary, a UMB mechanical engineer, and I were married. We moved to Sept-Îles, Quebec. We learned to live as a minority. We learned French, began to raise 2 children, and in 1971 we moved to Squamish, British Columbia. We loved Squamish. It was a small town. I began to play for ballet classes. I was a nurse, community health nurse. I was my kids' first piano teacher. And interestingly enough, when we moved, 15 years later, when we moved to Prince George, my daughter was in university. My son had to leave his first girlfriend. And of course, when you're 16, you know you'll never have another one. And watching him cope with that just pressed a weight of sadness on my heart that music helped to lift. While I was upstairs on our grand piano playing things that I could remember and familiar folk tunes, I could hear Ken in the basement playing on his drums and just drowning his sorrows. High notes, low notes. We survived a move to Vancouver, and interesting enough, Ken went to do tree planting one year and wanted to know if we'd put Vivaldi and Mozart stuff on his your little cassette player so we could listen to that while he was doing tree planting. So yes, Karen became a voice coach and accompanist for opera singers. My mother would love that. And Ken has an appreciation of music, and I do play by ear now, but that's another story.